Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com. Good evening and welcome to Jenna Ellis tonight. So investigations continue to be underway into the cargo ship that slammed into a stanchion or a support beam of the Francis Scott Key Bridge yesterday in the early morning hours. And it's been really fascinating just to see what the response has been from the Biden administration, and particularly President Biden himself, who seemed a little confused at yesterday's press conference and suggested that he had used the Key Bridge himself to commute, which was apparently by rail, even though there are no rails on the Key Bridge. So he seemed a little bit confused, but watch this.
At about 1:30, container ship struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which I've been over many, many times commuting from the state of Delaware, either on a train or by car.
By train or by car. Yeah, trains don't cross that. So can we really trust the Biden administration to do anything? And where on earth is Pete Buttigieg, who doesn't seem to be doing anything besides maybe chest feeding and, being the diversity, equity, and inclusion czar of the Biden administration. And yet we need to take this whole event. Obviously, it is a terrible tragedy, but we need to take it seriously in terms of what actually happened and what the government regulators can potentially learn from this whole experience. So this was an op-ed coming from the Gateway Pundit, and the title is "The Baltimore Bridge Disaster" by supply chain expert and Navy veteran Jim Nelles. So Jim joins me now. And Jim, this op-ed, I read through it. You give a lot of really good information about what should have happened, and we can start there, but then also the economic impact on this port now basically being closed and about 40 cargo ships that are still stuck there. So let's start first with what we know, what the investigation may reveal, and why this wasn't prevented, this disaster.
Well, apparently the ship had some catastrophic failure of its either propulsion system or of its ability to steer. Seeing the lights go off tells me that it was a total failure of the propulsion system, which also generates electricity for the ship. You see the black smoke coming out of the exhaust vents, which indicates to me that they were trying to start emergency diesel generators to repower the ship. They weren't able to do that. The number one thing that needs to be investigated is why the pilot and the captain did not immediately drop both of the ship's anchors and secure it in the harbor before it hit the bridge. When a ship is in restricted maneuvering, which is what you are when you're going into or coming out of a port, you have the ability to drop your anchors immediately, and that is protocol if you lose steerage or if you lose power. That did not happen. The second thing that really needs to be investigated is they're now talking about dirty fuel being the cause of the complete failure of the power system. I'm having a hard time believing that because of the testing that has to be done to fuel before you load it onto a ship. You do visual inspections, and then you do something called an API gravity test, which tests the chemical makeup of the fuel. So either the crew was inadequately trained or the crew's training failed them when these events happened, and that's what led to this disaster. Getting to your question about the economic impact, it's huge. About $80 billion a year goes through that port. That's $220 million a day. It's the largest port for the United States for the import of cars, trucks, and farm equipment. In addition, that bridge was the only way for hazardous material to get into and out of the Northeast Corridor because they're prohibited from being driven through the tunnels that are in the area around Baltimore. So that's going to add a lot of issues when it comes to chemicals, when it comes to fertilizer, when it comes to fuel, when it comes to LNG.
So, Jim, and that all makes sense. And I've seen a couple of reports this morning, or at least potential speculation that the ship did drop the two anchors and they just kind of dragged along the ocean floor. I mean, is that even possible that the anchors were dropped and it didn't stop the ship from hitting the bridge?
The only report that I've seen said that they dropped one anchor, which doesn't make any sense in the world to me. Why would you only apply half of your brakes? right? The protocol should have been drop both anchors immediately and then see what you could do. I don't see that water is only 50 feet deep. They shouldn't have been dragging their anchor that way. So if they had dropped both the way that they're supposed to when they did, remember, they had time to issue a Mayday call to the authorities, and the authorities then had time to close the bridge. So that tells me they had a lot of time. They had minutes to get this done, and they didn't get the anchors dropped. They didn't get the preventative actions done in time to prevent the catastrophe.
Yeah, and this was just, I mean, these videos that are coming out of the incident and now the aftermath, seeing the bridge just completely collapsed in the water, I mean, are truly horrific. And this is catastrophic, as you said. And, thankfully it was in the wee hours of the morning and they were able to close the bridge. So there wasn't a lot of traffic on it. But the other question that I've heard a lot of people ask, and that I'm wondering as well, could the ship, if they had that much time, I mean, why was it on the trajectory to slam into this support beam or this stanchion? Shouldn't it have been like completely a different course? And if the ship had lost power, can it really just float along just by the wind and the waves and 50-foot waves to so almost perfectly slam into this bridge?
So once the ship loses the ability to steer, it's literally at the mercy of the current. And what the ship was doing was trying to go into the middle portion of the bridge in order to traverse out of the port and go into the Atlantic Ocean. And then my hypothesis is that the current then carried it into the stanchion.
This is just horrible. And so what happens now? I mean, is there, because this port is now closed, there are at least as of the most recent reports, about 40 cargo ships that are stuck in the port. What can and should the Biden administration be doing, and even local officials, to address this problem?
So we have to do a few things. One is the Biden administration needs to work with the other ports up and down the East Coast, Port of New York, Port of New Jersey, Norfolk, Savannah, et cetera, and probably force the labor unions there to relax their labor laws so that ships that would normally have been offloaded in Baltimore can be offloaded in these other ports, and they can run those ports 24/7. In addition, they're going to have to offload all the ships that are stuck in the port, put that cargo onto trucks and trains, and ship it to, again, other ports up and down the East Coast. That's going to take some time as well. And then we're just going to have to figure out where to divert all the different container ships coming to the East Coast to where we should divert them to. It's going to take some coordination. We haven't really seen this administration be very good at coordinating anything other than maybe a 2020 election. But in all honesty, they just really need to focus on the logistics and supply chain. And that's why it's such a shame that Pete Buttigieg is the Secretary of Transportation, because he has no idea what he's doing.
Well, Jim Nelles, thanks so much for your analysis. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path, and now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com, and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. The Supreme Court heard oral argument yesterday in the most important pro-life case since the Dobbs opinion a couple of years ago that overturned Roe versus Wade. And this time it's going to weigh in on whether the FDA can actually regulate in the manner that they are the abortion pill and allowing access for women to the abortion pill over the counter without even going in to see a doctor. This will have major impacts on women's health overall. And isn't that what the left says that they're always interested in, is that abortion is about women's health? And yet, when they're now contemplating having an abortion pill that's just over the counter that women can take well outside of the window that they are supposed to, which is just the first 10 weeks of pregnancy. They don't know if it's an ectopic pregnancy. They don't know any of these things. This really is damaging to women's health. So this is what the Alliance Defending Freedom CEO tweeted. They're the ones that brought this case. The FDA betrayed women when it removed the necessary in-person doctor visits that protected their health and well-being, a wrong we are urging the Supreme Court to make right. This was ADF's CEO, Kristen Waggoner, and you see her handle there. And beyond this, there are also implications of maybe more nefarious purposes and usage. Like, for example, a woman who spoke out on the steps of the Supreme Court yesterday, saying that her own husband had attempted to poison her with an abortion pill 7 times because he didn't want her to continue in the pregnancy. Listen to this.
My husband poisoned me 7 times with abortion pills in attempts to kill my daughter, Josephine.
Why was he against you having this child, and how did this happen 7 times?
We were recently separated, and my pregnancy was a surprise. We have 2 other children, and he asked for a separation to work on himself, and about a week later I found out I was pregnant. And we were all shocked and surprised, and he said that the pregnancy would ruin his plans and make him look like a jerk.
So incredibly horrific. Well, joining me now is Emily Davis, who's the vice president of the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. And Emily, all of these situations that can happen when you lose that in-person contact with doctors. I mean, obviously the pro-life movement is about making abortion access illegal in America and even unthinkable for the Christian conservative. But when we're talking about something like how easy an abortion pill is to access, you just go get it over the counter from CVS or Walgreens. I really don't think that the entire pro-abortion community and pro-baby killing is really concerned about women's health.
No, Jenna, I mean, this is just common sense. This should be the easiest thing that both pro-life and pro-abortion could come to the table on and say, FDA, do your job. They're violating their own regulations here. According to their own label, 1 in 25 women that take these will go to the ER. And what we were doing yesterday at the steps of the Supreme Court was yelling, FDA, do your job. And that's why ADF has linked up with these doctors, these pro-life doctors who are having to finish or help these women in emergency situations that are getting these drugs through the mail. Most people, when they think about an abortion in America, think there is a woman going into a Planned Parenthood and then she's seen an abortionist who's doing this procedure. Today, there are more women now getting these drugs through the mail, and that is because the Biden administration, using COVID-19, said, look, abortions have to happen through the mail now. So not only did they take out the medical professional in person, they put that young woman or girl on a screen, or not even a screen, as the Fifth Circuit said, on an online form, and therefore said she can now, or whoever is ordering, can now get these abortion drugs through the mail. It's frightening. And we're now seeing the ramifications of that. This is the new landscape of abortion in America.
And it's truly horrific, Emily. And it's not just a policy like a right versus left standpoint. I mean, this truly is about women's health. I mean, what possible justification does the Biden administration and these advocates to just have these abortion pills over the counter? Why are they trying to make this so readily available when it is very easy to simply go into a Planned Parenthood clinic or go to a doctor in a state that still does provide for abortion?
Yeah, this is so disheartening, Jenna, because most of us remember the 90s where, and we didn't like it then, obviously, but abortion, according to Democrats, should be safe, legal, and rare. But this just proves to me and everyone around me that they are doing this for the sake of abortion, not for the sake of women, and certainly never for the sake of the child in the womb. You brought it up earlier, but 1 in 50 women have ectopic pregnancies. They argue that they can screen for those. There's no way to screen for those adequately over online. And also, women who suffer forced abortions, coerced abortions. There was a study released last year that said the majority of women said that their abortion, they were post-abortive, and they said their abortions were either forced, coerced, or inconsistent with their values. How are those women going to be adequately screened for trafficking or coercion? I've been very vocal about this myself. I faced abortion coercion. Thankfully, I did not succumb to that, but I have friends that were forced. There's no way that this can screen for that. And so what you're doing now is you're putting young women and girls in their home, taking these abortion drugs alone, and they are having these terrible ramifications. There's nothing healthcare about this. This is putting politics over women and certainly over children.
Yeah, so well said, Emily. And I'm so grateful that you overcame all of those challenges and that you have healthy children. And, this is some even thinking about the impact potentially for minors to go and just have, an adult go and get them an abortion pill without their parents' knowledge or consent. I mean, there are so many nefarious ways that that women could access these types of drugs when it's not through a healthcare provider. And that's why we do have controlled substances when it's something that is potentially this harmful. So in listening to the argument today, in just the last about 30 seconds I have with you, what do you hope is the outcome of this case?
Absolutely. Well, I hope that the Supreme Court sees that the FDA didn't even follow its own regulations. I'm heartened that ACB did ask the question, how many women have to be harmed, before the FDA would consider this something that rises to the level. And we saw lots of really good questions yesterday about the FDA and are they impervious to any scrutiny at all? They argue that they are.
Yeah, well, Emily, thank you so much for your analysis, and we will be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. As you know, my friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of their life. He didn't stop by simply creating the best pillow. Mike created the Giza Dream bed sheets. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, which is crucial for my busy schedule. Mike found the world's best cotton. It is ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. Mike's Giza sheets come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. The Giza Dream Sheets come in a variety of sizes and colors. Mike's latest incredible deal is the sale of the year. For a limited time, you will receive 50% off the Giza Dream Sheets. You will also receive a set for as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo code Jenna. There you will find not only this amazing offer, but also deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow 2.0 mattress topper, which I have and I love, the MyPillow kitchen towel sets, and now even flannel sheets and so much more. We definitely need flannel sheets for as crazy as all of this weather has been lately. So go to mypillow.com and make sure you use the promo code Jenna or call 1-800-564-8475. That's 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna. So ex-RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel is out at NBC as a contributor after only 5 days. She didn't even last half a Scaramucci. I think it's absolutely hilarious on one hand, but also the circumstances around her departure are a little bit questionable at best. This coming because Chuck Todd, Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, the wonderful, prolific, truth-telling voices of MSNBC that are very concerned about the credibility of their network and not pushing, fake news or biased opinions at all. They were just outraged that Ronna McDaniel, a Republican, could come and actually have a voice on their platform. And so NBC execs actually listened to that drivel and said, oh, yeah, okay, we're going to cater to you, Chuck Todd, Rachel Maddow, and we are going to to cancel Ronna McDaniel's contract. So the circumstances around that, whether they did a payout, whether she has any sort of legal recourse, there's speculation about tortious interference with the contract potentially. All of that remains to be seen, and we can discuss the legal as soon as we know more. But in terms of cancel culture and actually wanting to be a network that has any shred of dignity left, I think that they just totally blew it. But this was Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow basically being giddy over Ronna McDaniel's firing. Watch this.
Our chairman of the NBC Universal News Group, Cesar Conde, who we both know very well, he sent a memo that we all got as employees here, rescinding the hiring of Ronna Romney McDaniel. And I know I felt very strongly about it. I know you felt very strongly about it. I think everyone from 4 o'clock on, from Nicole all the way to midnight, we all felt very strongly and said so on our respective shows yesterday. And I just have to say, when somebody does the right thing, I feel like it should be acknowledged as publicly as we acknowledged our outrage. And so I know how I feel about it. I am grateful to Cesar for actually making the right decision. I think it was the right decision, but I want to get your take as well.
Oh, well, thank you for asking me about it. I still feel like a little. It always feels wrong to talk about things, in the company
Agreed.
As if it's news. And it's just this. It's not the way either you or I are wired.
All.
I know, but I will just say that journalists are a fractious bunch. And in our big company with all sorts of different journalistic entities, you have all sorts of different people working in this business, doing all sorts of different kinds of work. And to see the essentially unanimous feeling among all the journalists in this building and all the sort of senior staff and all the producers and everybody in this building about this was one thing. But then to see the executives and the leadership hear that and respond to it and be willing to change course based on their respect for us and hearing what we argued, I have deep respect for that. I do. I mean what I said on the air last night on my show, that I think that
All right, so she's calling herself a journalist. That's hilarious. And also to say that they did the right thing in firing Ronna McDaniel. Well, let's bring in my next guest, David Reaboi, who is a Claremont Institute Lincoln Fellow. And there is so much just to laugh at here, David. But what is your take? Was this actually, are they right that this was right, that Ronna just lacks so much credibility she can't possibly be on the same airwaves as Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow?
Well, this is an interesting story, and I'm getting a certain amount of pleasure from it. Watching this play out, because it's wild. Look, the left in the person of NBC News is giving us a really interesting lesson on how to take what they believe seriously. Now, Ronna McDaniel just did everything that she possibly could to rig the game of the 2024 primary for Donald Trump. They gave she was there for exactly that reason and no other reason. She should have been run out of town on a rail after the 2022 disaster, but she persisted, and she persisted because Donald Trump liked her, and because she made it such that he didn't have to debate, he didn't have to face the other candidates that were in the primary. And so for all of that good work, she did exactly what the DNC wanted. When it comes time to put her on MSNBC, well, she gets hammered and rejected from there. I mean, of course, you're right about everything that you've said, and these guys are in no sense journalists, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to make anyone on the right or any Republican be considered beyond the pale. But that's just what they do. And they're taking their mission seriously, unlike the right that would, do backflips if they could get the head of the DNC on as a regular contributor. So, look, I mean, it's
Fox
a complicated
News got Donna Brazile, right? I mean, Fox News got Donna Brazile. A lot of people at the time, I mean, I remember this, especially after the 2016 election, and how, Donna Brazile was at the time reportedly, feeding the questions to Hillary Clinton for the debates. I mean, all of that came out, and Fox executives didn't fire her. I mean, as far as I know, she's still there as a contributor. So that's a really interesting point, David, that, the left is taking kind of their mission of their echo chamber a lot more seriously than the right. Is that necessarily a good thing, though? I mean, do we want to? I mean, certainly we don't want to amplify idiots or people who are not truth tellers, but we also know that there is going to be a divergence of opinion. So where should the networks go? I mean, more like the NBC model now, or more like Fox?
I would say, frankly, neither. I think the point that you bring up is a good one about, let's say, the health of our domestic political conversation. I think for sure it's a bad thing in the sense that it signals what people have called epistemic closure of the left and their refusal to deal with any views that are not their own. But the horse has left the barn on that score. Frankly, a long time ago. And so this is them doing what this is them doing what they're doing. It's not.
Yeah, and should Ronna have known this? I mean, she clearly, she went on, I think it was Meet the Press and with Kristen Welker, and basically genuflected toward the leftist position. I mean, she recanted a lot of her prior positions that she held, or at least publicly said that she did when she was the RNC chair, and now she even got fired after all of that. So we're only about 20 seconds left here, but doesn't that kind of make a fool out of her?
Oh, it absolutely makes a fool out of her. Which may be the big bright spot of this whole story.
Yeah, actually valid. I mean, you and I are no fans of Ronna for all of the reasons that you said. I would have loved to have a free and fair primary, but, Ronna didn't really give us that. So anyway, we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path, and now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com, and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. Well, Veep Stakes just got a little more interesting with Robert Kennedy Jr. announcing his pick for a running mate yesterday at a rally. And this is what he had to say about Nicole Shanahan, his pick.
Until the last American child gets to live a healthy life and to pursue their own happiness in the land of the free, until the last censor is gone from our government, I'm confident that there is no American more qualified than Nicole Shanahan to play this role. So I'm proud to introduce to all of you the next Vice President of the United States of America, Nicole Shanahan. Thank you all very much.
So, of course, President Trump responded, posting this on Truth Social. He said, RFK Jr. is the most radical left candidate in the race by far. He's a big fan of the Green New Scam and other economy-killing disasters. I guess this would mean he is going to be taking votes from crooked Joe Biden, which would be a great service to America. His running mate, Nicole Shanahan, is even more liberal than him, if that's possible. Kennedy is a radical left Democrat and always will be. It's great for MAGA, but the communists will make it very hard for him to get on the ballot. Expect him and her to be indicted any day now, probably for environmental fraud. He is crooked Joe Biden's political opponent, not mine. I love that he is running. So joining me now to discuss all this and more is our good friend Josh Hammer, who is a senior editor at large at Newsweek and host of The Josh Hammer Show. So Josh, let's first talk about this pick, and then I kind of want to get into the Veep stakes and whether or not this pressures Trump to now pick a woman. I think it does. But first, what do you think of Nicole Shanahan?
Yeah, Jenna, great to join you as always. I think that is a deeply uninspired pick, I think would be a polite way of saying it. I think that it is an utterly shambolic pick would be a slightly less polite way of saying it. Look, RFK's whole spiel, his whole pitch is that he is not of the uniparty, that he somehow stands outside it. And it was always a little curious on its own face because he literally has the last name Kennedy. I mean, his uncle was president of the United States. His father was the attorney general of the United States. But to his credit, I mean, he's the black sheep of the family. He certainly has alienated the Kennedy family in many ways. But he was running as very much an outsider and someone who wasn't just a literal outsider, but who took actual outsider stances when it comes to the pharmaceuticals and the vaccine mandates and things like that in particular there. And now he's picked someone, it seems, only because she's a 30-something-year-old billionaire. She's the ex-wife of the co-founder of Google, Sergey Brin. I mean, this raises all sorts of questions. I mean, wait, what is RFK's stance on big tech in general? Does he think that big tech was responsible for shifting a ton of voters to Joe Biden in the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story and the FBI and the Twitter files that Elon Musk has shown? This raises way more questions than it answers. But more to the point, Jenna, I think it just severely undermines his credibility as someone who is running as a grassroots champion of the people, who is not of the system, but is an outsider. He's picking here a consummate insider, someone who is literally famous only because of who her first husband happened to be and the fact that she has a ton of corporate money. So if RFK wants to run a traditional kind of corporatist campaign, then I guess by all means go for it and good luck with that. But that's certainly not the pitch that he started to make over the past few months.
Yeah, I totally agree. And our friend Charlie Kirk even posted and said that, this is a giant red flag. And for people who might have been interested or intrigued by his campaign, probably no longer. And I would say for any of the conservatives that were even contemplating this, regardless of the whole third party issue that obviously is implicit in this, even if they were just interested in potentially voting for him over Donald Trump, now this isn't just a red flag, in my opinion. It's a giant red stop sign. But let's turn, Josh, to the Veep stakes when we're talking about Trump's selection now. He has not announced a running mate. I do think this puts pressure on him now to choose a woman. And we all remember that he came out and said in the wake of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing that he was going to choose a woman to fill that seat. And he saw the identity politics there and he played along. And I do think that this is going to put pressure on him to choose a woman. What do you think?
So that's actually a very good point, Jenna, about when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away in the fall of 2020, just before that presidential election. And it's true that Trump and his inner circle, they all did immediately jump out and say, we are going to pick a woman. But by the way, I thought that was a mistake at that time, and I'll be consistent, and I'll take the same stance now, and I'll say that there's no reason to necessarily pigeonhole yourself in that position right now. Look, I mean, that is their game. I mean, that is their game, Jenna. It is not conservatives' game, or at least it should not be conservatives' game there. Back in 2016, by the way, it wasn't necessarily Donald Trump's game either. I mean, not just the vice president, but the presidential candidate that year, Hillary Clinton, was obviously famously a woman, a pantsuit wearing woman, as the case may be, with no shortage of skeletons in her closet. But that calculus did not lead or require Donald Trump to select a woman as his running mate either. He chose the exact opposite of that, a fairly kind of straight-laced Midwesterner by the name of Mike Pence. So he has shown his willingness to kind of defy this sort of pressure implicitly, at least before. And he might go the woman route. If he does, my top two predictions would be Elise Stefanik or Sarah Huckabee Sanders. If he does go the woman route, Jenna, my personal preference would be Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I'm a big fan of hers. I think that she is a fighter. I think that she has the courage of her convictions. I think that she is sincere. She was obviously raised by a wonderful man in Mike Huckabee. Her principles are just and her principles are true. As you know, my own 2 cents is that I think that J.D. Vance would be the absolute best pick. I think you and I respectfully disagree on that, which is totally fine. Good friends disagree all the time. But if he is going to go the women route, I would prefer it to be Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But I don't think that he should feel pressured by this announcement to do so.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think a lot of people, took my post saying, I think he's going to feel pressured, as if I'm agreeing with that pressure. And, certainly that's not it. But, I was one, in full disclosure, that told Trump at the time and his administration, don't pledge a woman. Just pick Amy Coney Barrett if you really think that she is the most qualified and just let it be a woman. So, so we have seen seen some of that pressure getting to him, but I think you're right that, he's not always gone with the identity politics pressure. I do think Sarah Sanders would be an interesting pick, but my top pick, honestly, is Tulsi Gabbard, only because I do think that electoral math matters, and she can bring in people that someone even like Sarah Sanders, who's way better than, some kind of MAGA aficionado like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or, Carrie Lake, who doesn't even know the first thing about governing. I think that Tulsi Gabbard could bring in some of the disaffected Republicans that now I think are more up for grabs because of Kennedy. So we're only about 20 seconds left, but what's your response to Tulsi?
Not my pick, to be totally candid with you, Jenna. I don't think that she's even currently a registered Republican, if I'm mistaken. I think that she's still an independent right now. I mean, she was a Democrat basically just yesterday. I mean, does she even stand for unborn children? She's been wholly unreliable on Israel. I mean, there's a ton of issues out there where I just don't necessarily know that I trust her judgment. So I would go in a different direction, but I see the...
Yeah, so we'll have to save that one for another day. Already out of time for this segment. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. All right, continuing my conversation with Josh Hammer, who's a senior editor at large at Newsweek and also host of the Josh Hammer Show, which I highly, highly recommend. It's one of the few that I actually take the time to listen to, and I read everything that Josh writes because he's very considered. And it's even when we disagree, it's always a really good opinion, Josh, that I'm like, oh, maybe I haven't thought of that, or you've persuaded me a few times to change my opinion, actually, which conservatives should do when given more information. So not many people can say that about me and my opinion. So always appreciate it. But let's turn to another topic that has just taken conservative Twitter, now X, by storm, which is this huge issue of Christ is King, this term, and whether or not it actually can be used in some contexts as anti-Semitic. Interestingly, our mutual friend Allie Beth Stuckey put this on Twitter. She said, there's no way to explain to a normal person what's happening on conservative Twitter right now with that picture of Matthew McConaughey smoking, looking at his phone. And I think that's pretty apt, Josh. So what do you make of this whole controversy?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, Jen. So I'm trying to think where to start. Look, I mean, I guess I didn't start seeing Christ the King starts trending on Twitter until after October 7th. And I specifically saw it first. Maybe I missed it, but I specifically saw it first, the hashtag start to trend, when Candace Owens used it when she was sparring with her former boss, Ben Shapiro, back in November about the war in Gaza. And she was criticizing Ben at that time for being emotionally unhinged, for being hysterical. And she was throwing some Christ the Kings in there as well. Look, I don't claim to know the extent of Candace Owens' personal religiosity. I feel somewhat uncomfortable commenting on that. At a bare minimum, I don't think that she has always been a woman of profound faith. Maybe she has found her faith more recently. But when you're arguing with your Orthodox Jewish boss and calling him emotionally unhinged and hysterical after the slaughter of 1,200 Jews, and you're throwing in some hashtag Christ the King there, it's very difficult to interpret that charitably. It's very difficult to interpret it in anything other, I think, than a slight. And, you're the Christian, Jenna, in this conversation on the Jew. But my understanding is that it's pretty bread and butter Christian doctrine or social thought or teaching or some combination thereof that you don't necessarily go ahead invoking Christ's name in order to try to insult people or to try to kind of one up them or something like that. It seems to me like that would be borderline blasphemous, if anything. So look, as someone who strongly supports a strong church in America, in fact, Jen, I'll tell you this, if there's one thing that I could have happen tomorrow morning, if I could snap my fingers and there's one thing that I would have happen tomorrow morning that I think would get America back on the right track, I kid you not, the number one thing would be a religious awakening. I want more Christians in good God-fearing churches, and I want more Jews in good God-fearing synagogues. That is the number one thing that could get America back on track. So I am the furthest one in the world who would ever, in theory, complain about public professions of faith in Jesus or Hashem, our God, or whoever. But when it's used in a manner to try to insult someone or to try to kind of fan the flames of bigotry, let alone the world's oldest bigotry, anti-Semitism, that is so currently aflame right now, I find it very distasteful at a bare minimum and quite offensive and insulting in maximum.
Yeah, I think that's very well put and very well said, Josh. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the Bible in the Old Testament, so I think Jews and Christians agree that one of the 10 commandments is to not take the Lord's name in vain. And when you are using
Yes.
a specific invocation of the name of Christ in order to slight another person, and call out a Jew for basically saying, well, God has abandoned the Jewish people, which is not what Christianity and sound doctrine believes, by the way. But even if Candace Owens does or doesn't believe that, when she's using this as a cudgel to invoke the name of Christ to put down a Jew in an argument, that absolutely is taking the Lord's name in vain. And this is what I think Christians more broadly, who are saying, well, I want to say the phrase Christ is King. I mean, this is Holy Week right now. I mean, we are about to celebrate Easter, which is the holiest day to the Christian, even more than Christmas and the birth of Christ. This is the culmination of everything about the truth of the gospel of Christ that we celebrate on Easter Sunday. And so to have this conversation, and Christians suggest that, well, we should be able to say Christ is King. He's King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Absolutely. But context here matters. And doesn't it always? Because something, for example, in a court of law, you could say, well, a baseball bat, a golf club, that's not a murder weapon. But if it's used for that purpose, even if it's not designed for that purpose, it can become that when used in a specific context. And so I think that more people should be aware of the anti-Semitic purpose and should just have more respect, frankly, for the differences and distinctions. If we want to argue theology, totally fine, but do that in good faith, be respectful, because one of the things that Jews and Christians absolutely have in common is a belief in the 10 Commandments, the Judeo-Christian God of the Bible in the Old Testament, and the fact that biblical morality and the basis of the 10 Commandments is a good starting place to operate society. We contrast that to even Islam and especially this woke nonsense agenda. And I think you're absolutely right, Josh, that if we could get back to the Judeo-Christian worldview as a civil society, we would be a lot better off. So so that to me is the Christian position. What would you say to the Jews who are watching this, who may be offended by this or maybe not even understand? I mean, where does the conversation go from here?
Well, look, I'll say two things, Jenna. One is I just want to underscore your point here that whatever theological disagreements about the Messiah that Jews and Christians have, and they are very profound disagreements theologically about the Messiah, whether he is here, whether he has come down already, or whether we are still waiting for his arrival. I'm not going to downplay those theological disagreements, but we share a lot more in common than we disagree on. I mean, I'm actually a fan of the term Judeo-Christian. I mean, our Torah is your Old Testament. We literally share books of canon, books of scripture together. And we have a very similar worldview. If you look at our text, if you look at the way we view the world when it comes to basic values, like the right to life, to family, when it comes, so many things. I mean, I could spend like hours talking about this, right? I mean, we agree on so much more than we disagree on. And I guess my message as well would be, I mean, Candace Owens is terrible. Candace Owens, who is disproportionately responsible for starting this, is absolutely terrible. Jenna, I was sounding the alarm on Candace Owens back in October 2022, quite vociferously, I might say, back when she was defending Kanye West during his pro-Hitler phase. I personally thought that she should have been fired from the Daily Wire back then, and I publicly said as much. I was happy that they finally parted ways with her over this past week. Seems quite a bit long overdue in my estimation. She is going to have her own platform. She'll do whatever she does now. Her free speech rights are not being censored there. Yeah. But I think it's insulting what she was saying.
Yeah, 100%. And I couldn't agree more that I think she's terrible too. I don't support anything that she does. And by the way, we have a lot more in common as evangelicals and Catholics as well too. But that's all the time that we have for Jenna Ellis tonight. You can always reach me and my team, Jenna@thesalemnewschannel.com.